How to keep the house in a divorce. As a certified divorce financial analyst or CDFA, that is one of the most common questions I get from clients. So let me run you through the analysis that I do with these clients when they are trying to figure out, hey, can I keep the house? So let's take a situation where we have the wife wants to stay in the house. Her kids have not yet graduated from high school. And let's say wife works part-time and so what we first do, number one, is we have to know an estimate of the value of the house today. We can use Zillow, Redfin, an average of those as a starting point. They're not accurate, but it's a good starting point. As you go through the process, you'll probably want to get market comps from a real estate agent, or get an appraisal, or both. So, but let's just say we have the situation where the house is worth $1.2 million. Now we have to look and see how much is owed on that house, not just the primary mortgage, but is there a HELOC, a home equity line of credit? Is there a home equity loan? Is there a solar loan? So let's say in this case, there's just a primary mortgage and there's only $300,000 left on that mortgage, a $1.2 million home and only $300,000 left on the mortgage. Great. That means the equity is $900,000. 1.2 million minus 300,000 is 900,000. If wife wants to stay in the house, she's got to buy her spouse out. Let's say her spouse in this case is her husband. So if 900,000 of equity, if she wants to keep the house, she's got to pay him 450,000, right? Because why would he accept a buyout for less than that? Now you can talk about you're not paying broker's fees and you're not having to get the house ready and so forth, but let's just say the equity is the equity, all right, at this point. So 450,000. So, but not only does she have to pay him 450,000, remember there is a $300,000 mortgage on the house, which means the person keeping the house is going to keep the mortgage. So she will need to take in her own name that $300,000 mortgage, which might be in both their names at this point, and pay him 450,000. Okay, so now is this possible? Let's look and see what other assets there are. In California, there's going to be community property, and there may be in your marriage separate property. But let's just say there's no separate property. Everything's community property. Well, unless there's $900,000 worth of other assets, this is going to be challenging. Let's just say the only other assets is $900,000 worth of retirement accounts. Well, normally if you split everything 50-50, you each would get 450,000 from those retirement accounts. So one option would be for wife to keep the house and husband to keep all the retirement accounts. 900,000 in retirement accounts, equity in the house is 900,000. Okay. It's a very simple example. But looking at that, you always have to remember that $1 of equity in a house is usually worth more than $1 in a retirement account, especially if that's pre-tax money that went into the retirement account, because in retirement, when those funds are withdrawn, federal and state income tax will be paid on those. Again, there's different circumstances that I analyze with my clients. Could be Roth IRA. I don't want to get too complicated, but just know that not all assets, their after-tax value can be very different. But let's just say, okay, wife says, that's all right. You keep all the retirement assets. I'm going to keep the house. Fine. Now, what do we do about that $300,000 mortgage? Well, if she's taking husband off title of the house, he's going to go off the mortgage. And when he goes off the mortgage, she has to refinance the mortgage in her own name. It's a little bit of a bummer because interest rates are now higher than they were over the past several years, which means that you might have a 2.75% or 3% mortgage, and now you're going to have to refinance into a higher interest rate mortgage. But now what's involved? Remember, we said that the wife worked part-time. Does she earn enough income to qualify that a lender will give her a $300,000 mortgage? Maybe, maybe not. But what we can do is we can look at, would she be entitled to child and or spousal support? If the kids are under 18, probably child support. And if husband earns more, probably spousal support for some length of time. So if we can work in a cooperative fashion with husband through mediation or husband's attorneys being collaborative, well, then perhaps her part-time income and child and spousal support will be enough and will be considered qualifying income to allow her and enable her to refinance that mortgage in her own name. Great if that can happen. So then she has a house, she's paying the mortgage, and has no other assets. So that could be a problem as a financial planner, as a divorce financial planner, that is of concern to me. Now, let's say we see this a lot. The house is really the only asset they own. They don't have much in retirement. They don't have much in savings. They have some debt. Well, in that case, can wife keep the house? Well, remember, she owes husband $450,000. So she could potentially do a cash out refinance or some variation of that, whereby she no longer has a $300,000 mortgage to consider, but a $750,000 mortgage. Is she able to now refinance and have a $750,000 mortgage to pay the existing $300,000 mortgage and pay $450,000 to husband? Probably might be tough qualifying for a $750,000 mortgage. So these are the kinds of issues we think about. Now, one of the objections from the person who wants to stay in the house is, well, Laurie, my God, rents are so high, and when you rent, you're not building any equity for your future. Well, often they compare the rent to just how much the principal and interest is, like that mortgage payment, the portion of the mortgage payment, that's principal and interest. They don't consider property tax. They don't consider homeowners insurance. So, and they frankly don't consider maintenance. I know how expensive it is to own a home. When things break, things have to be maintained. They have to be fixed. Also in a home, often utilities are slightly higher than when you're renting a place. Not always, it depends. And the landlord, if you're renting, is supposed to take care of most of this stuff in terms of maintenance. So when you're trying to rationalize that renting is so much more expensive than keeping a house with a mortgage, may not quite be the case. People talk about the deduction they get for a mortgage. Well, now, the tax laws are a little different over the past few years, and that because the standard deduction is higher than it used to be, particularly if you file as head of household. If you have at least one dependent, you may find that the standard deduction gives you a much bigger tax break than itemizing the interest on your mortgage. And property tax is still capped at $10,000, and you might be earning that much in terms of paying state income tax. So it's called the SALT limitation. But without getting into the weeds, that's some of the things we analyze. Is it really more expensive to rent? All right. But let's say you still don't want to sell the house. Is there a way for you and your spouse to negotiate to co-own the house for a limited amount of time? Perhaps Johnny's 16 and will be going off to college in 2 years. Perhaps you and your spouse can co-own the house until Johnny goes to college and you can list the house for sale. In that case, it's really important to work with a CDFA, a certified divorce financial analyst, to figure out, well, how would this work? Does wife stay in the house? What expenses does she pay? Is husband still paying the mortgage? Is husband paying her support and she's paying the mortgage? But this co-owning the house for a short amount of time at least allows you to avoid having to refinance the mortgage. I've seen many couples do this. They will have a provision in their marital settlement agreement that they co-own the house until August 1st of X date of X year. And at that time, the person occupying the house must refinance the mortgage in their own name, or the house must be listed for sale. So I hope I've given you some insight onto how to analyze how you can keep the home. Is keeping the home the best thing to do financially, and is keeping the home even possible? So if you are located in California, going through a divorce in California, please don't hesitate to reach out to me for a complimentary consultation, Laurie Itkin, the options lady. And if you live outside of California, I encourage you to go to the IDFA website and search for a CDFA in your state. That's the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts, IDFA.